Hi everyone, just doing a bit more painting and thought I would do another paint along where I point the camera out my window rather than show you the figures I'm painting because it always embarrasses me. And today it's not particularly inspiring weather or anything like that, so the view isn't brilliant, but just noticed on the local news website that an unexploded bomb has been uncovered. I think the camera's pointing at the area, the road where it is. I've looked on Google Maps and tried to line the camera. So there was a bomb that was detonated, a controlled explosion in Exeter a couple of years ago, and it really did go very badly wrong. It was a massive bomb and took out quite a lot of the properties, damaged them structurally. Massive explosion and a plume of smoke. You can probably find footage of it on YouTube if you're interested. So there's not likely to be anything happening in the view, in the time I'm going to be painting. There is a picture. I'll try and put the photo up over this briefly. Might get done for copyright, I don't know, so I might have to remove it. But it's definitely a bomb, I would say. I'm not an expert, but it definitely looks like a bomb, and it definitely looks quite large on the local website. They've got the chap who is digging for building an extension in his daughter's garden, and hit something with a spade about a week ago. He says it's about 1 metre long and half a metre in diameter, and they sent a picture to the police, and the police sent it off to the emergency ordnance disposal team, and they knocked on their door within about 5 minutes and evacuated a large area. So as I say, these things don't normally move very swiftly. Obviously they have to take a lot of care, so the residents of that area are probably going to be spending the night in an evacuation shelter or with friends and relatives and so on. So anyway, that's the backstory to the view you're looking at today. But as I say, it's not particularly interesting view as such, and there isn't likely to be anything happening in the next hour or two. So I thought I would do that anyway and just carry on with my painting, chat to you for a while about various things, and allow you to pass a little bit of time painting yourselves maybe. So at the moment I'm putting some more paint onto the final stage of my Burgess project. Well, that's not quite accurate. The final stage of my Berber forces. Once I finish these, I still have to carry on painting unpainted figures for the French Foreign Legion, but these are the last of the Berbers that I need to get painted up. They are 1898 miniatures from available in the UK from Empress. 1898 are actually a Spanish company, So they do have their own website, but if you're in the UK, it's easier to pick the figures up from Empress. And I've shown you in the past mounted figures that I painted from them, but about, I'm not sure when it was, about 6 months or so ago, they added dismounted figures to the range, so I thought I would get hold of those as well. And when I've got these painted up, I'm sure I'll have enough to make up a force for the men who would be kings. I've already got a comparable size force of Tuaregs, so I could either alternate playing Berbers and Tuaregs against the French Foreign Legion, or I could combine the Berbers and Tuareg into one big force, because they did fight alongside one another, I suppose. Tuaregs were really just another clan or tribe, I don't know how you describe them, of Berbers. So it wouldn't be unreasonable to put them all together. And I did find, if you watched my battle report some time ago now, of the men who would be kings, I did find that the walls are very bloody in terms of injuries that are sustained by rifle fire. So the Tuaregs in that particular game didn't really stand much of a chance. So they lost the game quite easily. So maybe, you know, it'd be reasonable to have a much larger size attacking force, and then they might have some possibility of overrunning the French Foreign Legion firing line. Anyway, that's what I'm getting on with, just to let you know what's going on in the, you know, on my painting desk as I talk to you. I had intended as well, I don't know, I want to talk at some stage, having one of my rants about the state of the NHS, but I think I will leave that to a future paint along to do that. So I do have a lot of opinions on the state of the NHS, having worked in the NHS myself, and now as a patient of the NHS. My feelings are just getting more and more extreme as time goes on, really. You may remember that I've said in previous videos that I'm having quite a lot of trouble now with my foot. I've got ongoing issues with my prostate, which I was talking to you about on my last paint along, but my foot is also beginning to play me up. So for a long time, you know, while I had a catheter in my bladder, I wasn't making any effort to walk great distances anyway last year, but I'm finding now it's really painful to walk for more than about an hour and a half. And I went to my GP about it last December. I saw the physio in the surgery there. He recommended some exercises to try and help me to stretch the calf muscles and to stop me walking. As the calf muscles tire, they tend to pull your foot kind of outwards, so that you're walking kind of with the toes pointing outwards a little bit, and that has a knock-on effect to the muscles on the underside of your foot apparently. So they gave me lots of exercises to stretch the calf muscle and strengthen the muscles underneath my foot. I also recommended that I started wearing a sort of pad on my foot just to cushion the foot a little bit. And I've been doing all that religiously, and it seemed to work for a while. You know, it helped me to be able to walk a little bit further before the pain started, but when the pain does start, it's just as bad and makes it really hard walking. And, so I got in touch with the GP again last week now, and they're going to get back to me about future possibilities, but they suggesting I probably need to see a podiatrist up at the hospital, and they warned me, their words were that the waiting times on the NHS are quite horrendous. So if it's anything like the waiting times for urology, which it's taken over a year now, and I still haven't got to see a consultant. You know, you're probably talking about a year, maybe more, to see a podiatrist. And so the prospects of me being able to, you know, enjoy very long distance walks, which you know, part of my life really. I mean, not just long distance walks, but even, you know, I don't drive, so everywhere I go, every place I visit, you know, where I live, even walking around town, I'm just used to walking, not bothering with public transport, taxis or anything. You know, I've got plenty of time. I just stroll around the streets and, you know, get a lot of pleasure just from being out and stretching my legs, and that's all going to be a little bit impaired for the time being, so it's a bit annoying. Well, very annoying. And as I say, I've got very strong opinions on the NHS and the steady encroachment of the private sector. Another example is I had really bad toothache 2 weeks ago, and you just cannot get an NHS dentist nowadays. So I've had paid to go privately with my dentist for decades now here in Plymouth. But when something like that happens, you really notice the expense. I had a crown last year that I paid about £800 for, and lo and behold, the toothache now is directly underneath that new crown. So if I do need to have root canal treatment in that area, it's another £800. But for the time being, I think what he did, he said it's probably due to a sinus infection that's tracked down into the jaw. So he put me on antibiotics, and that does seem to have cleared it up. But my thinking is that the potential is always going to be there for it to get infected again. So all in all, I'm not, you know, enamoured of the the NHS at the moment. I mean, the whole, the whole philosophy of caring for people from the cradle to the grave, and care being free at the point of access. That's long dead. Just the GP's comment about the waiting times on the NHS, it clearly intended to, as a veiled suggestion that I'd be better off paying to see a consultant, get much better and faster treatment. I just can't afford to do that. It's all I can do to afford my dental care. Anyway, as I say, I'm not supposed to be talking about the NHS too much in this video, so I'll move on swiftly from that. But yeah, that's very much on my mind today. I tried going out, seeing how far I could get to walk today, and there's a place called Plimpton, which on the just outside of Plymouth. It's on the River Plym. I walk over to occasionally just to check out there's a charity shop over there that always seems to have really good history books and even military history books. So I go over there at kind of about every other month just to see what is on the shelves. I went over there today. Went over there today. Caught the bus over there. Decided rather than walk, and then walk back, and it did play my foot up. But it was worth going over there because I found another 4 Osprey books. For some reason, they always seem to have. It's unlike any other charity shop I know, in that they always seem to have a good supply of Osprey books for some reason, and they sell them off for £2.50 each. So I'll buy them whether I'm into the period or not, because you never know what you're going to be in terms of wargaming. You never know what you're going to be interested in the future. So I picked up 2 books on Frederick the Great's army, one of which it turns out I had already when I got home, so I got a duplicate of that, and 2 books on the army of Louis the 15th. So obviously intended for the 7 Years' War period, and I am kind of, always had a sort of passing interest in the 18th century anyway, which has recently been reignited by my, resuming my painting of the Jacobite Rebellion. But in my lead mountain I do have some front rank figures of Prussian infantry. So they may well come in handy one day. So a bit of a mixed outing, in that really played my foot up, but I was glad to get hold of those books. Just having a look on the website again, see if there's any update to the situation over in Kiam. No. No updates other than officers are currently at a property in St Michael Avenue, Plymouth, where a suspected World War II ordnance has been found. There is cordon in place and some properties are being evacuated. Please avoid the area at this time and we'll provide more information when we can. Yeah, and that's it. Nothing new. The bomb itself is going to be pretty hard to remove from where it is. It looks as though it's covered in a lot of concrete and kind of rubble material, maybe from an earlier patio. So it looks well wedged in there. You can even see the, I'll put the picture up again at this point just to show you, but you can even see down in the bottom right hand of the picture what looks to be like a detonating cap, as though that's come off. There's a sort of threaded, I don't see how it can be anything other than a bomb. It really looks like a typical, you know, it's got a sort of threaded plug and then another area that's sort of more conical, which looks like the point of it. But had it exploded, then it would just be, it wouldn't exist, so it must be an unexploded bomb left over from the Blitz. Plymouth, of course, was very heavily bombed during the war. Even the road that I live in, I live in a cul-de-sac. It's got 12 houses in the cul-de-sac, and on the council map of where bombs fell in Plymouth during the war, there are 8 bombs in the gardens, or fell in the gardens of my particular road. Some of which actually destroyed the houses opposite me. And you can see the bomb damage to this day there, because the chimneys had to be rebuilt. And my chimneys are all concrete, but on my side of the road, but on that side of the road they were rebuilt in brick. So it's very, you know, the signs of the bomb damage are still there to this day. Painting is going really, I'm doing an awful lot of different things at the moment painting wise, but I always try and concentrate, you know, spend at least an hour each day doing something that is close to completion, which at the moment happens to be these Berbers. I reckon it'll be about another week and I'll have them finished. I'll put up I think what I'll do is probably put a showcase of all the armies I've got so far for the project, rather than just of these figures. How many are there? There's about 24, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20, there's 24 of them. I paint so slowly anyway. I found best way to keep my kind of motivation going is really, you know, to have the minute an inclination takes me to paint anything, I get it out, put, you know, prime it, put at least one coat of paint on it somewhere, and then it just gets put into a conveyor belt of projects, you know, that I just rotate around. But as I say, I start every painting session by picking out the thing that is closest to completion and doing that, and that's working quite well. So there are definitely some things on my painting desk that you know, I have to admit are a real chore at the moment. I've just got taking no joy in painting them whatsoever. It's just I just want to get them done and out of my lead mounting. But there are other things that, you know, I'm really enthused about them. I mean, my latest thing, as you may know, I read that book called Empires of the Steppes recently, and it's got me interested in painting up more themed, you know, the steppe tribe themed projects. So I've gone back to my Mongols, which is a very old army, one of the first armies I ever painted, and I'm adding to that now because I have got literally hundreds of unpainted Mongols in my lead mountain. But I've also started another project, different era to the Mongols, but also steppe tribe related, and that's all I'm going to say about that at the moment. So I'm enjoying painting those. But for instance, I'm trying also to finish off some 15mm muscovites that I started years ago, and you know, they've just been, the box has just been haunting me for years, you know, so get me finished, you know, get me painted. So I finally thought, yeah, I'll put them into this system, but they are just awful to paint. The figures aren't very good anyway. They're very poor quality castings, and you know, I'm not particularly motivated by an interest in that period at the moment. So they're lucky, you know, if once a day I put one dab of paint on two of the figures, then they're lucky if they get that much attention. But you know, every little counts, and the day will eventually come when I'll look at them and think, do you know what, they are closest to finishing out of all the things I've got on my worktop at the moment. So then, you know, they'll be accelerated, bumped up the painting schedule, and they'll be done, and I can stop fretting about them. That's the plan at the moment, anyway. Yeah, the breaking news now is major incident declared after suspected bomb found. I'll refresh the page in a moment and give you an update on the situation. If I remember, the bomb in Exeter a couple of years ago, I can't remember when it was exactly, but it's really, if you haven't seen the footage, there's an amazing shot taken, I think, from a helicopter or a drone maybe, of the bomb going off. But look it up, Google something like Exeter unexploded bomb, and you'll see it's an absolutely extraordinary explosion. I mean, it really makes you realise how frightening it must have been to experience the Blitz. If that's just what one bomb can do, and imagine, you know, a whole fleet of German bombers over your town. just, you know, reducing it to rubble. Yeah, the major incident was declared at 14:16. It's now, as I speak to you, 14:27. So only 12 minutes ago. They've extended the police cordons out. Yeah. Well, at 14:03 it was a 200-metre cordon. So probably extended it out from that. Apologies in a way, this paint-along is going to be very kind of frustrating for everybody, because it's, as I say, it's way too soon to start filming any potential explosion, because they will spend hours. Probably won't be until tomorrow. But I thought I would kill a little bit of time, make another video. Talk on camera. I am finding paint-alongs, personally, I'm finding them very helpful at the moment in keeping me at the painting desk, getting work done. Otherwise I tend to, I'm talking about listening to other people's paint-alongs, not doing them myself. But yeah, I am finding them a useful tool for helping me to knuckle down and get some painting done, get some paints put on these figures. I haven't really got much else in the way of news to talk to you about. Oh, I've ordered the Wars of the Roses, the art of, what's the chap's name? Is it Graham Turner? I've forgotten his name. But yeah, that looks like a really inspiring piece of artwork to help me when I begin to put some paint on those Athena miniatures that I bought at the local wargame show a couple of weeks back. They're probably going to be the next thing when I've got these Berbers done. They're probably going to replace, you know, fill the space that the Berbers vacate. So should be able to make a start on those in a week or two, hopefully. But yeah, I saw channels that are a lot more popular than mine have reviewed them recently. Seventh Son, Martin at Seventh Son. Sure, a lot of you watch his channel. He had a sort of quick flip through of it, of the book, and I just thought I'd have to have that. But for some curious reason, I don't quite understand, on the Osprey site, they're already selling it at a discount rather than its retail recommended price, and I don't understand why that is, but you know, not complaining. But also they didn't charge me for postage, so whether that was an error or not, I don't know. But it says delivery £0, so presumably they know what they're doing. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to receiving that. And I had to buy a lot more figures for this semi-secret Steppe Tribes project. Because as I say, I've got a lot of Mongols, but I haven't got any for this particular Steppe tribe that I thought would make an interesting army. So I bought a small number of figures. Goes back to that subject, you know, that I've spoken about in the past, that Zen miniature painting has commented on in particular. You know, I agree with it. That basically I did exactly what I said. You know, is the habit is to buy a force that allows you to play a set of rules where you don't need many figures. So the second edition of Lion Rampant has an army list for Steppe tribes, but you know, it's a handful of figures. Really, you're talking about, you know, skirmish size battles, really. And I don't feel so bad about doing it for that kind of period. You know, the sort of Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, because you can imagine it more feasible that smaller sized contingents would bump up against one another and conflict would occur. But you know, when it gets to the Black Powder era, it's just not, you know, it makes for a good game if you like the rules, and there are some rules, I won't name them again here, but there are some rules that I think are appalling that are very popular for the Black Powder era, that you know, involve 30 or 40 figures per side. You know, but it just strikes me as so unrealistic, you know, to think that an army could put, you know, composed of one artillery piece, 10 cavalry figures and a load of line infantry milling about in incoherent groups rather than formations, you know, can meet another equally ridiculously proportioned enemy force on the tabletop. It just doesn't work for me. But when you're going back to the medieval period and earlier, you can imagine sort of small war bands doing just that. I said earlier, that made me think of another thing that was going through my mind the other day, so I'll present that to you now as another talking point. But it's not very politically correct. That's not the right word, but it's not deemed, it's not fashionable any longer to refer to the Dark Ages as the Dark Ages, and that's mainly because, you know, there's more and more evidence. You know, if the evidence needed to be uncovered, it was always there, but you know, that the Dark Ages were a period of light. You know, they were just as enlightened as the Middle Ages, you know, in terms of art and scholarship and so on. So it's deemed inappropriate now to refer to them as the Dark Ages, which I'm happy to accept that that's a perfectly valid argument, which I kind of agree with, but it doesn't stop me still referring to them as the Dark Ages, simply because, you know, it's been a term in use for such a long time now, and people know what you're talking about when you refer to the Dark Ages. You know, so it's not intended to be offensive in any way. Not that I can really understand people taking offence at something like that. You know, it's you know it's something that where the people people who lived in that time, 99.9% of whom are nameless and will never be known, you know, and they died thousands of years ago. So why on earth should we be worried about offending them in that way? Or is it that we're offending modern scholars? You know, if it is, then they're being a little bit precious, I think. But anyway, that's not what I wanted to get on my high horse about. But the alternative now is to refer to the Dark Ages as the early Middle Ages. But how long will it be before that becomes an inappropriate term to use as well? Because the Middle Ages are far more specific in a way, in that they refer to the period in between, i.e. in the middle, in between the age of antiquity and the modern age. So if what we used to refer to as the Dark Ages began with the fall of the Western Roman Empire, you know, so the Dark Ages for Britain began, as far as a lot of you know, sort of Victorian scholars are concerned, with the army, the Roman army leaving Britain. If we're now supposed to refer to that as the early medieval period, the early Middle Ages, and that began in 400, and the Middle Ages ended with the Renaissance, I suppose you could say, which was the 15th century. So we're now 400 years away from the late Middle Ages, but antiquity is adjacent to the early Middle Ages. So how long will it be before we have to stop referring to the Middle Ages as the Middle Ages? And what are we going to call it then? You know, my point is really that they're just, all these things are just convenient labels, and academics and everyone else shouldn't really waste too much energy in trying to redefine labels, you know, when they're common parlance anyway. But if you are going to insist on calling the Dark Ages the early Middle Ages, then you should really start planning now for what? For a more appropriate term. Just a thought, put it out there. Not serious really. Wondering if it was starting to rain then. Not sure, you might begin to see a few raindrops appearing on the window. It is meant to rain quite heavily later on this afternoon. Make the work of the bomb disposal experts even more uncomfortable. Makes you realise though as well, you know, how much more damaging modern conflicts are to the sort of every country's infrastructure. When you think about what's going on in the Ukraine, for instance, at the moment, I mean, it's not just that, you know, the tonnage of bombs has increased dramatically, you know, in conflicts. If you look at the Vietnam War and how much was dropped on Vietnam during that conflict in comparison to, you know, the amounts in the Second World War, but also the nature of the weaponry, you know, the fact that it's deliberately intended to elude detection, you know, sort of more components made of non-ferrous parts, I mean landmines in particular. The landmines often can be dropped from aircraft now, you know, sort of scattered indiscriminately. But presumably the same is true of bombs. I mean, you can't say the only good thing about it, but the only difference really in modern technology is that they're far more bombs are far more efficient and more likely to detonate now. There's a lot less likelihood of duds. Let's have another look at the website. Well, it says first picture of bomb that finder hit with spade, 1436. It's now 1445, but sure that's the picture that I've been looking at all this time. Yeah, it is. So that's not news. That is, I suppose I'm the same situation now, except I've got other things to talk to you about, but it's typical of, you know, when you watch terrorist incidents and bombs, you know, bomb incidents unfolding live on television, that the coverage is nothing except a repetition of the same footage and the same words from the same correspondence at the scene, and it does make for very dull viewing. So apologies for the fact that I'm doing exactly the same thing in a way, but all I can say is this isn't going out live anyway. You know, it would make for great YouTube viewing if I did happen to catch a great plume of smoke going up in the distance, but you know, that's not the I'm not doing this as a live coverage of an unexploded bomb incident. I'm doing this as a paint-along, so I'm going to talk to you about other things as well, you know, just have this as the sort of theme, have the bomb as the theme to to the video. Don't know how long I've been going for now. Let's have a look. There's no way of telling. I thought there was some way of telling from the camera. Yeah, I can't see on the screen. I must have been going for about, I don't know, half an hour, maybe more. So I won't go on for very much longer. I can feel my fingers beginning to ache from holding the paintbrush. It's another penalty of growing old. The fingers get stiff. Don't have so much trouble with my eyes, touch wood. I need glasses, but that'll be the you know, if I ever get cataracts or something like that, that'll be my last enjoyment in life, painting figures. Go on, if I can't go out walking, I'll have to give up alcohol. That's my prostate problems. Not going to be a great deal left. So enjoy. I'm not the most sociable of people. I like to keep myself to myself in the main. I suppose cataracts just stop me seeing fine detail on figures, but I can still watch telly, watch videos. That's another thing that I like to watch. Like to do, which is a bit naff, a bit dull, a bit sad, I suppose. People say what are your interests, but I do like watching DVDs. I watched The Caine Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart yesterday night. It's a DVD I got in a charity shop fairly recently. Seen it before, but hadn't seen it in a long time, and thought it a very good film. It's a fictitious story, because I think it says at the beginning of the film there has never been a mutiny in the US Navy. Don't know if that's still true, I suppose it is. But it's based on a book by Herman Wouk, W-A-U-K, and I think was the author of, what was it called? Something like something of war. There was a TV series dramatisation of that book. Some time ago now. Can't remember what it was called. It's something like The World at War. But anyway, the Caine Mutiny is a really interesting study in almost psychology and the interpersonal conflicts that take place on a ship, a naval vessel, because the ship in question, the USS Caine, and again I don't know whether it's a fictitious ship or not. If I knew I was going to be talking to you about this, I would have looked it up. But anyway, it's a mine sweeper, and the story is of a very keen and well qualified ensign straight out of Princeton, who is assigned to this ship, which turns out to be a complete rust bucket. Very slovenly crew, a lot of lax discipline and so on, and that's the way the captain likes it. You know, he gets his ship, his crew are weary, and they perform to his standards, but he's very lax on procedures and discipline and so on. And this bright new ensign isn't terribly impressed, but slowly gets used to the ways of the ship. But pretty soon after he arrives, the captain is replaced by a new captain who's played by Humphrey Bogart, who, just as an interesting side note, his name is Queeg, which is the name of the, I wonder whether it's deliberate, but that Queeg was the name of the computer program that took over from, what was that? Sorry, I've forgotten, but in Red Dwarf, there's a really crazy, I bet you it was deliberate, you know. There's a really lax, lazy artificial intelligence. Holly and Hilly. At one point becomes a female actor, but yeah, Holly or Hilly, I can't remember. Both. Yeah, Queeg takes over because the Cybernetics Corporation, or whatever they're called, decide to decommission the artificial intelligence because it's performing so badly. So I bet that was a deliberate reference to the Caine Mutiny, because the Humphrey Bogart character is, you know, is very insistent on everything being done according to the protocols. So tucking in, you know, don't have shirt tails can't be showing, all this kind of thing. Regulation haircuts, no beards, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, he's a very flawed character. He makes a lot of poor decisions and then blames, you know, the repercussions of these poor decisions on his crew rather than taking responsibility for his own decisions, and shows cowardice under fire, all that kind of thing. There's even an episode where he is paranoid. I mean, he's definitely got a paranoid character, but he gets paranoid about some strawberries being misappropriated, which is very similar to the cheese episode in The Mutiny on the Balcony, if you know the story of that, or have seen the film of that. And that was another, I watched recently all 3 film versions that I could get of The Mutiny on the Bounty. But anyway, yeah, so the Caine Mutiny is really a good study in how the crew begin to question their captain's behaviour, and eventually the executive officer takes over because he thinks the Humphrey Bogart character Queeg is endangering the ship and the crew. But then he is tried for mutiny for having done so, and technically he is really he's really guilty of mutiny, which in a time of war was potentially a capital offence. And the prosecution, sorry, no, the defence lawyer in the case is able to dismantle Humphrey Bogart's character in front of the tribunal and demonstrate his paranoid behaviour. But the moral of the story comes right at the end, really, that the defence lawyer is ashamed of having done it, because you know, he's very critical of the crew's behaviour. You know, the fact that they did effectively mutiny. You know, and he said they should have had a lot more regard for Queeg's experiences and the reason why he, you know, from his wartime service, the reasons why he had become so neurotic and paranoid and psychotic and so on. You know, and taken that into consideration, really, and tried to have found you know, a more subtle way of correcting his behaviour. Very difficult, you know, it's kind of like a good sort of what would you have done kind of scenario for naval officers in training, I suppose, because there's no doubt, you know, that the situation that they did show was that had the helmsman obeyed Queeg's orders and not the orders of the executive officer during this typhoon, then the ship would almost certainly have foundered and all their lives would have been lost. You know, so it was a really interesting case study in a way. Not that it was a real case. In you know, what would you do as a junior officer or an under officer in a situation where you seriously doubted the competence of your captain? There's another similar film, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Crimson Tide. Now that is a really good film. But again, there's a very similar. Gene Hackman is the captain, and I've forgotten his name. The executive officer's got, I can't remember his name. But it's based on a submarine, and conflicting loyalties of the crew. Some side with the captain, and some with the executive officer, and really exciting film to watch. That's another good film if you haven't seen it, a good submarine film. Funnily enough, in that film there is a conversation. It's a bit of a kind of cameo kind of scene where some of the crew are talking about the cinema depictions of submarines and which are the best. You know, so you could add Crimson Tide to that list. The latest 14:54, which was only 6 minutes ago, police cordon on Parkside. I'm not sure where Parkside is, but obviously the cordon is being extended out and out. Oh, blimey, yeah, I do know where yeah, I know where that is. I've been on that. Been down that road, knocking on doors for the Labour Party. I recognise that. That's a pretty large area of Plymouth now, which has had to be evacuated. I wonder if this will get on the national news tonight. Just looking on Google Maps to see exactly where Parkside is in relation to St Michael's Road. Yeah, it's quite a large area now. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. There's a kind of an island that contains 21 terraced houses that has definitely been cordoned off, and probably I would say the houses on the other side of that island as well, which is, you know, a lot more terraced houses because it's a bigger circumference. So yeah, it's definitely a major incident. I'm going to carry on painting, but I might struggle to find topics to talk about, I must admit, because this is sort of an impromptu paint-along. Impromptu, but prompted by the bomb scare. Trying to think of more wargaming related subjects. I would definitely recommend, if you haven't watched it already or you haven't looked at their website, I'll just put in another shout out for Athena Miniatures, who were at the local wargame show in Plymouth a couple of weeks back. I thought their figures were really fantastic and deserve much better profile than they have already. I left comments open on that, and while a lot of people did comment, it looks very much like some of the bigger name channels have tired of my own sort of paltry efforts and don't watch anymore. But you know, if they picked up on it, then I'm sure they would get a lot more attention. Athena Miniatures, that is. can you do? You know, just pass the word on, and hopefully it will spread. I'm not being sponsored by them in any way. It's, you know, I made a purchase, didn't get any, I didn't ask for any freebies or reduction in price. I made the purchase and made my own judgment. But, I wouldn't like to receive freebies from people anyway. Not that that's a sort of veiled invitation to people to send me freebies for a number of reasons, but one is that I always feel that, you know, you're kind of obligated to give a favourable review, and I can be quite cruel in some of my reviews sometimes when I do buy things that I think are rubbish. I will say so. But the other is that it kind of necessitates you breaking in, getting them painted and breaking into a painting schedule, and mine is so busy anyway, so full that, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort to sit down and paint something, especially if it's in a period that I'm not particularly enthused by anyway, just to give a review of some miniatures that you got for free, you know, so I tend to avoid that kind of thing. And the other thing is I keep my address fairly private as well. You know, there's not many of you out there that even know my email address, let alone my home address. Yeah. Oh, something happening. It might be an advert. Yeah, it's an advert. That's another thing that gets me on. I used to use AdBlock. I've spoken to you about this in the past. And then, because I appreciated so much the utility that, you know, the service that AdBlock provided, I made the massive mistake when they often ask for contributions, a bit like Wikipedia did. I made the massive mistake of giving them too much money, and they immediately wrote, you know, replied. Sure, it wasn't any, you know, I'm sure it was a artificial intelligence doing it. It wasn't a person behind it, but I immediately got this automated reply saying, if you're going to pay that amount of money, why not buy our premium service? So I did, and then found, what was it called? It used something. I've forgotten the virtual private network. Is it? It used some kind of technical lingo like that. But once you employ a virtual private network, then that gets noticed by certain other websites. The The one in particular that bothered me was the National Lottery, which I always play online, but you can't have any virtual private networks running. You know, if you want to gamble on the National Lottery. So then I had to find a way of disabling disabling ad block, and couldn't do it without what's the word? You know, what am I trying to say? Without deregistering, unsubscribing to it. And then I couldn't get the free service back because they'd ceased offering it. So I now get tons of adverts on things like the local newspaper website. They're just appearing all over the place. And for a while I was getting them on YouTube as well, but I just got so fed up with it on YouTube that I went for their premium service, which is quite expensive. But you know, it was stopping me watching YouTube. I was just getting so annoyed. And equally I get annoyed with people who, you know, who monetize their YouTube channels, which you have to do, but then tell you that they're keeping the adverts to a minimum when they're not. You know, they're putting, there is absolutely no reason to have adverts in the centre of videos. You still have the ability to disable those if you monetize your channel. But you know, you get I think it's really hypocritical of YouTube channels. I won't name any of them, but you know, who say that they're confining themselves to what YouTube obliges their channels to have in the way of advertising, and they're not. You often see adverts in the middle, and you know, when they suggest, as one of them did suggest to me, that I think his words were, it's not a major hill for people to climb to watch an advert in the middle of his, you know, his material. My only answer to that is, it is, and you make plenty of money from the advertising you get around your videos. So if you are going to adopt the attitude that advertising is a nuisance, then don't say at the same time then it's reasonable to expect people to watch it inside, which is what he was doing. I won't say who it was because it's a good channel and I still watch it, but the main reason I still watch it is because I don't see any of the garbage adverts any longer, because I pay, and the amount I pay is actually almost equivalent to the amount of money I make from my advertising revenue. So you know, it's kind of the best compromise I can make, really, is not to see it myself, to keep it as low as possible for my viewers, and to recommend, whether you have a channel yourself or not, I would recommend paying for the YouTube Premium in order that you don't see adverts yourself. Someone who shares my feelings about it, I know, because he's expressed himself as Napoleonic Wargaming, who I think, you know, he often remarks on adverts and on YouTube, and I think has recently, he said he was going to, I think he's recently taken up YouTube Premium so that he doesn't have to watch them himself. He's much younger than me. I was about to say maybe it's an age thing, but he's a lot younger than me. I think it's just a matter of taste. You know, some people are quite happy with adverts. I used to work in advertising. Might be the reason why. I had such a horrible time. Maybe it's one of the reasons why I am so averse to adverts in general, not just on YouTube. Same with the NHS, to get back to that. I had such an unhappy time working in the NHS and was constantly berating people for making money out of private medicine, private practice, and not being very popular with my managers, who are in the main commercially driven in the NHS. It's bollocks if you think they're worried about patient welfare. They're measured on performance and targets and so on, and you know, that is all commercially driven now. It's a sort of self-reinforcing spiral, because the more waiting lists go up, the more private practice and makes from trying to bring them down, and the NHS workers are able to work overtime as well on what they call waiting list initiatives and so on. So the whole commercial kind of incentive for staff in the NHS is really to maintain the waiting lists rather than reduce them, because that's how they make the additional, that's how they make their money up. So they get away with living on such low standard wages. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to rant about the NHS in this video, so I'll stop myself at that point. I'll keep going for about another, I don't know, it'll probably take me about another 15 minutes or so to finish what I'm doing on these figures, and I'll call it a day at that. So we can have a look at the website. (1511) it's now 1521, so 1511, the evacuation zone has been widened. There's a picture of a policeman going from door to door telling people to leave their homes. It must be awful. It could happen to you anywhere, but that area of Plymouth is particularly prime because it's right beside the dockyard, which was naval dockyard, which would have been a prime target for the Germans during the war. my road is a long way from that, but the reason it's got such a heavy concentration of bombs on it is because it's on a hill. So the plane that dropped the bombs was flying up the gradient of the hill, if that makes sense. So as the bombs fell, they come out at an even spread, but they hit the ground more quickly because the plane was going uphill. The bomb pattern is falling uphill as well, so you have to envisage that. But as the bombs fell up the slope, the ground was closer to them. The ground became closer to each consecutive bomb as it fell. You just have to imagine that visually, because I'm not explaining it very well, but that's the reason why there are so many bombs in such a small area. Because that's another thing Plymouth is noted for, is that it has a lot of very steep hills. At times in when there's ice on the roads, when the heavy vehicles can't get to my road, so bins don't get emptied and things like that, because everything slides down the road. I don't have a car, but I was warned when I first moved here that there were a lot of car thefts in the area, because people could just break into the car, take the handbrake off, and it would be several miles before they needed to use the engine, so they could just park the car somewhere else and then take their time about getting the engine going. Someone I know at the Wargames Club was quite a few years back now. His car was damaged by another car that didn't put the handbrake on properly, one of his neighbours, and it just rolled down the hill into his car, wrote his car off. He doesn't live that near to me, but as I say, hills are all over Plymouth. Wargaming, I can't think of any more wargaming subjects. It's not easy doing these. If you don't write a list of, an agenda of things you want to talk about beforehand, I suppose Salute is coming up, and I am sort of intending to go to it, but at the same time beginning to wonder whether it's on the cards again this year. I mean, I haven't been in a couple of years now. Last year it was just really ridiculously expensive to stay in London on the Saturday night. And as I say, I'm kind of a bit strapped for cash at the moment with my potential dental issues. Although I am thinking now, if the pain has gone from my teeth after the course of antibiotics, so I'm probably going to cancel the root canal treatment. He said do that, give him 2 months, not 2 months, 2 weeks notice. So I'm not due to have that till near the end of March. So if the pain doesn't come back, I'm probably going to cancel that. But it's still expensive to go all that way, spend all that money on rail fare and hotels, when all you're going to do is buy things that are going to be, you could have saved the money on and bought more of, by buying them on the internet. So the only reason really to go is for the spectacle of the games and the enjoyment of meeting up with like-minded hobbyists and so on, which I do enjoy. But I'm going to say one of these old men things, but Salute isn't what it used to be. I don't get the same buzz out of the games. I don't think they're as good as they used to be. Really sort of noticeable thing about a lot of wargame shows now, and demo games, is people just put massive amounts of figures on the table, and they, and the two sides just bang up against one another in the middle of the table. And whilst it's impressive to see a lot of figures, a lot of nicely painted figures, but it's not really it's the same thing from table to table. One table you'll have 2 elephant armies meeting, and then on the other, on the next table you'll have 2, I don't know, Cold War's gone hot, like Team Yankee, which is just like tank parks, meeting one another. So that, and then the other thing is this business of my foot. That, as I say, whenever I go anywhere, I just walk massive distances. I like to stay in Croydon, and in recent years, my mother, died, and she didn't die in Croydon, but she wanted to be buried in Croydon, close to her mother. So I'll stay in Croydon and visit her grave, but since she died, I've only done that once, I think. Because that's the other thing, train strikes. There's occasionally been train strikes of the same weekend, or about the same time. But the walk out to the cemetery from the town centre is not, it's not a short distance. And if I am going to spend the whole of my couple of days in London walking around, then on the first day I'm going to have really crippling foot pain. So Salute isn't the attraction that it used to be to me, but I would like to be able to get to it again. But I'm never going to, I had, more often than not, I used to go up just for the day, come back. And if that went well, then it was just about doable. Totally knackering, but you'd spend it's about 3.5 hours on the train, and then another hour to get across from Paddington to the Excel Centre. So that's 4.5 hours each way. So you're talking about spending 9 hours on trains, underground and Docklands Light Railway, to get to it, just if you're going for the day. And you can do that if everything goes well, but so often, you know, almost predictably, something would go wrong. Trains would be cancelled, there'd be engineering work going on somewhere. If you were lucky, the trains were on time, but they'd just be totally unpleasant to be on, you know, full of football supporters and stuff like that. Crowded, uncomfortable, noisy. So I gave up on that a long time ago. And thought it'd be better to stay in hotels and have a little mini city breaks up there. But as I say, that's just getting harder and harder to do. I used to be, I have another rant, I used to be annoyed at my local wargames club, the Plymouth Association of Wargamers, because they always used to, they still to this day, if you go to their website, they still say that they organise trips and so on to conventions, and they did occasionally put on a minibus, and that was great when they did that. But then you got other people at the club saying that it was unfair. If you didn't want to go to the show, then it was an unfair way of spending the club's money. Even if you contributed, you know, even if you contributed towards the cost of transport and so on. They objected to it, and there's not really anyone there who's motivated to organise such things anyway now. So they haven't organised a trip to a convention or a trip anywhere, to a museum or something like that. Haven't done it in decades, and yet they still says on their website, which is, you know, attracting new members. Not that they do, they very rarely get new members, but they're trying to attract people under false pretences. But I got kind of hustled out of the club, really, you know, or out of any involvement in running it long ago. You know, and it's partly because I criticise them for things like that. Anyway, I had a good old moan today, didn't I? I'll have one last look at the website, and then I'm going to call it a day. So I think it must be an hour or more of me going on, and I've finished doing what I'm doing with my figures. Made some good progress there. And the latest update, 1536, and it is actually 1536, so this is hot off the press. A number of streets have been evacuated, including St Michael Avenue and Brunel Terrace. Has your street been evacuated? Let us know via email or message us on Facebook. So that's really, they're just sort of fishing for content really now. There's going to be nothing happening probably until tomorrow. So anyway, there you go. That's my my paint along to do with the unexploded bomb in Keyham on the 20th of February 2024. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. See you on the next video.